All right, everybody, welcome to the Heartbeats podcast. I'm your host, Ruth Kogan, and I want to thank you for joining me on the podcast all about love, specifically and most importantly, the love God has for us, as demonstrated in how he brings two people together for marriage and how he is loving upon his singles. And we have two of my favorites that I've been waiting to get on. I call them Mama and Papa J, but they are formally known as Carl and Tracey Jenkins. And we had their daughter and son-in-law on first season, Sharnice and Akil Jenkins Gallant. And I won't say too much. We'll kind of get into how we know them, but they were sort of some of my surrogate parents' team while living in New York. So welcome, Mama and Papa J, to the Heartbeats podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, this has been such an honor, and you all remind me so much of my parents. They got to host me at times at their house, a real house, not an apartment, and provide delicious food and most of all just conversation, which just reminded me of my own home and my parents. And so, and you guys continue to pour into me even though I'm no longer there. So I want to thank you all for that. I want to just hear, what should we know about the Jenkins?
You want to go first?
Ladies first.
Okay. We've been married now for 42 years. We have two grown women. We can't call them children anymore. Shanice and Carla. And we have a son now because Shanice got married. We live in Connecticut. We were originally from New York City, Harlem. And we met in high school.
We didn't go to the same
high school. No, we went to the same church
while we were in high school.
Yes.
So you guys started early on. So we're going to get a good high school sweetheart story. I take it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And Papa J, did you want to add anything on? I'm sorry.
Well, she kind of summed it up. No, that summed it all up. That's when we met. Where we met was at church. Her cousin actually brought her to church, and maybe I'm jumping ahead here a little bit, but her cousin Beverly, who I had known for years before, brought her cousin to church one day, and the rest is history. I saw her from across the room, as all the romantic books like to say, and I had to find out who this young lady was. In a huge church that we went to, it was still very small. And so I knew she was somebody who was not a member there. And I happened to bump into her cousin, who she happened to be looking for. And she said, "Oh, that's my cousin. Let me introduce you." And one thing led to another. And 44 years later, we're still here.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, well, I'm going to tease that out because that's good. I know it's longer. The story is juicier than that, but no, that's good. And before we start teasing out the details of that, I want to remind the audience, I want to remind everybody that as Mom and Papa J start sharing the details, the nitty gritty of their story, and listen for those gems, because these two are gem droppers. But as they start sharing more in depth of their story, I want you to pay attention to what's sticking out to you about their story. Because God uses stories to teach us, to encourage us, to build our faith. And so around here, we call that our heartbeat. So at the end of the episode, you're going to hear my personal heartbeat. So what was God speaking to me as I listened to their story? And pay attention to what God is highlighting to you about their story, because he is so intentional to teach and speak into our lives through other people. So let's dive in a little bit more. So Mama J and Papa J, before you met at this church service, you're young, you're in high school. Were you looking for a relationship? Were you just doing your high school thing? Like where were you all at before you all actually met?
Ladies first.
Actually, I was in a struggle spiritually. I was in a backslidden state. I had left my relationship with God, and my cousin Beverly, I had gotten into a depression, and I was kind of just staying in my room in the dark, in the bed, and my grandmother called my aunt, and my cousin Beverly said, "You coming with us to church today?" So that's what started my journey back toward God. Mm. And that was where I was before we met.
Mm. Wow. What about you, Papa J?
Well, I'm what we call a PK, a preacher's kid. So from the very moment I took my first breath and was able to be brought out into the air, I was brought to church. And I have very funny stories about me and a dear friend of mine who also was a PK, how our mothers would sit us in the window of their little storefront church during all-night prayer so we could sleep. So that just lets you know how long, I've been walking around the Lord and then walking with the Lord. I'm what you'd call an old head for the most part. And by that, I mean, a lot of my friends within the church were all older. So you tend to take on, I guess, older thought processes and so forth and so on. And by that, I mean, at 10, 11 years old, I was part of our church radio broadcast team. Now, I was a PA at the time, running to get this and running to get that for our director, Van J. But at that age, I was being groomed. And, grew up in the church doing all things that you do. I was an usher. I was on the choir. And then finally moving into the radio broadcast ministry. And so I guess if I can say it this way, being around those older individuals, and by older, I just mean maybe by a few years, but being around them just made me think differently than a lot of the kids my age. So I've always been in a responsible role. So when I think back, that took a lot of the choices that I made early on, at least made me think I was ready to do certain things that I may or may not have been ready for. But I think that had a lot to do with it. like I said, with some of the choices that I made early on, and then the actual choices after that really grew me up early. Again, we met while we were both in high school. She was going to a school called Norman Thomas, and I was going to a school, Julia Richmond, and doing all the regular things that kids do. But even while I was in school, I was very involved in the inner workings of the school, SGO, senior class. So again, I think a lot of the things that I was involved in from an early stage was what allowed us to think we were able to ask a 16 and a half year old, do you want to get married? But again, I jump ahead because I know you have questions, and I'll break it down a little bit differently. But that's how it happened.
And just to throw something funny in there, the maturity that he's talking about was such that when Carla was, I want to say 3 or 4, it was our 29th birthday, because we're only 6 months apart.
Right.
And I can't remember if we were in Florida for his birthday or mine, but we asked Carla, how old is mommy? And she said 29. And we said, how old is daddy? She said 59. So she thought he was much more mature than mommy. He had to be older than mommy.
Oh, wow.
She was just learning numbers.
I have no concept of age at all, but
None.
Brain not fully formed, children.
But she was clear that daddy was older than mommy, because mommy act like a big kid. And daddy was much more mature.
Now that's interesting too, because you said you're 6 months apart. So you met when you're both 16, right? Or were you 17
Yeah.
at that? Okay, so 16. So yeah, let's start digging into the nitty gritty, into the details. So you, Mama J, you show up to this church service that you were told, let's go. You're gonna go to church with us. And Papa J, you see her. What goes through your mind when you see her? And why did you feel like you had to talk to her?
Well, this is a family show. No.
You can give the real honest answer. You're a 16-year-old boy.
Okay. Again, I saw her from across the room. Again, just somebody who I saw that was very beautiful.
Amen.
Pay me later. And somebody I didn't know. And like I said, the church seats about 2,300, and on a good Sunday morning was always packed. But we were a small nucleus within a big church.
Yeah.
So anybody new would stick out. And she was walking from, I would assume, where she was coming from, the ladies' room, getting ready to go upstairs and out. And I said, well, I may not ever see her again, so let me follow her, see where she was going. And that's when I bumped into her cousin, who was sitting down with her friends. She said, oh, that's my cousin. Let me introduce you. And she did. We talked very briefly. And as I said, I was part of the radio broadcast ministry, and I felt as though I wasn't going to see her again. So I believe I gave her my number because I had to run to go upstairs and do the tapes and prepare all of that. And I said, if not, you can get my number from Beverly, as if she asked for it. But I was hoping, and she didn't call. She did not call. But our church had a youth center. And I guess Beverly, as she said, knew what she had been going through around that time and just said, let me just invite her, get her involved with some of the youth around the church, and invited her over to the
gym.
Yeah. And I was in the building, but I was not in the gym. But a certain somebody was looking for a certain somebody.
No, what happened was Beverly took me to the gym, and she and I got into a little, it wasn't really an argument. It was just a little tiff. And she said something that kind of annoyed me. And so I kind of just said, you know what? Let me go calm down somewhere. That's my cousin. I love her. I don't want to be up here in front of all these people. So, because I still wasn't saved then. God was still working on me. So I went walking around upstairs and ran into Carl.
Nope. Who'd you run into?
I don't know, you.
You ran into my brother, who you thought was Carl. Because that's what you told me. That's what she told.
I don't remember Richard. I don't remember running into Richard.
See.
So I guess he didn't make an impression at all. Because I don't remember him. See, I remember running into him.
You don't forget certain things, like I ran into your brother.
Right.
So take my word for it, Ruthie. But we ultimately did end up connecting at the gym because
he was working on something, and I just sat there and was talking to him while he was working.
Yeah,
he was fixing something. I don't know what.
Now, let me interject real fast because very early on, Papa J, you cut out for a second, and it was when you initially greeted Mama J, and you gave her, what I missed was you gave her your number. And
my phone number. Yes.
Your phone number. Good job. And you did not call.
And she did not call. She came. No.
Right.
Grandma didn't allow us to call boys.
Did you want to call him? Or were you like,
the first time, no. When we met again in the gym, and like I said, while he was working, he made me laugh. And like I said, I was kind of in a depressed state. And it was the first time I had laughed. And we just connected. And then I just found him to be easy to talk to, funny, handsome. And it just kind of spiraled from there. But I think it was the fact that he made me laugh in the midst of what I was going through that stuck out to me more than anything.
That I wasn't aware of.
No.
I was just...
You didn't have a clue.
Being sociable, actually. And
being
I didn't
yourself.
find out too much later.
Wow. So you all connect in the gym, and you are sitting there while he's working. He's making you laugh. How did you all proceed then from there into like, all right, we're in an actual relationship, I guess you could say?
He started coming to my school.
You mean like showing up and picking her up after school, or
she just made me sound like a stalker.
He started popping up at my school.
She just made me sound like a stalker. Okay.
We generally don't let anybody come to a school, but anyway, continue.
I was part of a group called Friends of Julia Richmond, which was philanthropic group that funded a lot of programs that we had going on at the school. And in fact, while the main portion of the school, this was around the time when schools had schools within schools.
Yeah.
And the actual school that I was part of was called Talented Unlimited. And Norman Thomas was going to be one of the venues we were looking for to utilize their auditorium. Mm-hmm. And I found it a little odd. I said, in the meeting we was in, they said, well, you know, one person go to Martin Luther King High School, one person go to Norman Thomas, one person. I said, I'll go to Norman Thomas.
Sign me up. Take that
one.
And another story about his maturity. So he gets there, and I'm actually working in the auditorium as a stagehand for a play we were doing. So he walks into the auditorium, and I'm like, what are you doing here? And he tells me about TU and so forth. And he's sitting there, and he goes, the acoustics in here are great. And I'm like, okay, he's a nerd.
I'm a sound engineer.
Right.
I'm a sound engineer. And what I was scoping out was for the venue was supposed to be for our chorus to put on a concert. And so the first thing that struck me was the fact that the acoustics in the auditorium, while nothing at that moment was going on, I could hear the people on stage talking.
Yeah.
And I said, wow, if I can hear them from where we were sitting, the first thing that came to my mind was the acoustics are great in here. And
now, I'm not saying it was a bad thing that I thought he was a nerd. But
right.
I just was like, he's a nerd.
She did.
I'm a little struck at the moment by just the providence of God in this, because first of all, you are working on this philanthropic project that happens to you want to use these different schools, one of them being her school, and then you also work in the auditorium?
I was actually in the auditorium that day at that time, and it wasn't something I did on a daily basis. This was a weekly thing while we were producing this play.
Right. So sounds like God was helping you all out. But so you show up to the auditorium where she is, and what do y'all do from there?
Well, again, I was shocked that she was there.
I was shocked he was there. We kind of sat in the audience, and we were way back from the stage. And that was when the conversation ensued about the acoustics.
I can't tell you much about what we really talked about because
I just remember the acoustics. I really don't remember the rest of the conversation.
Because everything I came there for, I got within the first minute. Well, first couple of minutes. Because I went back giving Norman Thomas a glowing review, even though we didn't use the venue. The fact that what I came there for, had she had been behind the curtain or not in the room at the time, I probably would have gotten the same result and probably would have left, because this was after school and I had things that I needed to do, or so I thought, because whatever I had to do after that got canceled in my head. Because I ended up staying and I took her home. And now I lived on the east side of Harlem. She lived on the upper west side of Harlem.
Oh, yeah.
So taking her home was clearly out of my way.
Yeah, definitely out of your way.
And, you know, it was going to be a little bit of a haul to get back home. But I was going to the church which was on the west side of Harlem. So taking her home and then leaving there and going back to the church is actually what happened. But yeah, that's really what connected us. And it was like one thing after the other. It was the first meeting at the church.
In the
Then
gym.
it was the second meeting at the gym. Then it was the third meeting. And maybe there was one conversation or two in between that time. And then the school. And then she started calling.
But then he started coming to my school all the time. All the
So
time.
this became regular.
Well, because I also had friends that went there.
No.
I did.
Nope.
I did.
But were you visiting them before you met her?
Nope.
So
Nope.
I got what I came to get, Ruthie. But my high school life, or years I should say, were very busy. I was not the regular kid that didn't have nothing to do. So I was always busy, and there were times when I couldn't see her because there were just either things going on with the church or things with school. As I said, I was both in senior class and student government. I was in this program, Talented Unlimited, so we were going out of town and performing in various venues around town. So while I can say I didn't have much of a social life, I had a very busy social life.
sure.
And again, it still goes back to that whole aspect of being placed in positions of leadership and around other leaders. I got a picture of what I wanted to do, what I wanted to be and aspire to be, not to mention my own father, who was an elder in the church, and I come from a long line of them as well. And being around the chief apostle of our church, then working closely with him, working with I don't want to just call him the producer, but the director of our audio ministry, Van Jay, and all of the things he was involved in. Then he began taking me around to do other things with him.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I was always thrust in something that was beyond my years.
Yeah.
So I had a little bit of a head for certain things.
Yeah.
I had great examples in my own parents and saw what their life was like in raising three boys and, being part of ministry and seeing a father who went to work early in the morning and came home at night, paycheck in hand and handing it over to my mother saying, here, take care of what you need to take care of. The responsibility that he had, he never wavered from. So the example, and that's exactly what he was, an example of what a father and a man is supposed to be like. I had the benefit of that every single day. And so, I wanted to do just like he did.
Yeah.
Not even having the full story. I didn't need his whole full story. What I had at that time at least told me that I've seen enough to know what it looks like. And then I needed to find out what it took for him to become that. And that I didn't learn until much later. So you can see a picture, but you don't know what it took in order to create that picture.
Sure.
You only have a part of the story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it was my aunt and uncle and watching their marriage. I was raised by my grandparents and I did watch their marriage, but they were much older. So there was not a lot of activity. There was just being at home, relaxing, and that was about it. They were retired. So it was my aunt and uncle where I saw real interaction. And like Carl describes his father, Uncle Joey went to work every day and came home. And at the end of the week, handed the money over to Auntie to
Which,
handle
by
things.
the way, her uncle and my father had the exact same profession.
Yeah, that's true. Butchers.
They were
Oh, wow.
butchers.
They were both butchers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which are,
And,
very specific title. Yeah.
Yeah. And my uncle was once, because they weren't always saved, but once they got saved, my uncle just became the beacon almost for the whole family of what a man is like. My grandfather was the strength of the family and the protector. If anybody came after any of his girls, because he had he had two daughters and one adopted daughter, three daughters, three granddaughters. And if anybody came near us, Grandpa's gun was coming out. He wasn't playing. He was very protective. So he was the protector. And Uncle Joey was the family patron. And he would work from 6 in the morning or 5 in the morning till 6 at night and still drive down to New York City to pick me up, to take me back up to the Bronx so that I could go to church with them on the weekends. And so they were the ones who introduced me to what a life living with God and building a relationship with God. And, my uncle would walk in the door every day and my aunt would be cooking and he would walk up behind her and give her a big old kiss and hug her. And that was what I saw. And that's what I thought a relationship should be like,
I mean, what y'all are...
And sometimes, like Carl was saying, you see these pictures, you don't know what it took for them to get there.
Right. Yes. It's funny you mentioned that, but because I remember my mom's parents, my grandmother, my grandpa and grandmother Herwalt. And I just saw in my grandfather just really adored my grandmother. And just a very faithful, humble, more quiet man. If you know the whole Herwalt family, you wouldn't think he would be quiet. But they had a lot of kids, so the kids were just loud, right? But they were quiet, but he just was a very faithful man, right? Went to work, long hours, like y'all said, came home, helped with the dishes, whatever needed to be done. But it took me a long time and probably some conversations with my mom and aunts and uncles to realize I'm observing a 50-year marriage in the making. Not, I don't know what they're, and I don't get the opportunity to ask them this side of heaven. But I'm observing a 50-year marriage. And so kind of that long view of this is where what you work towards. This isn't necessarily how it starts. You got to start somewhere. But I am curious. So I appreciate you both actually sharing that, because I think that's a very powerful testament as to why couples like y'all need to share your story, because to provide sometimes that wisdom that isn't always there in people's lives. But I'm curious. I have a question for both of you, and they're slightly different, but about the same. Mama J, how the marriage you got to observe, right? How did that shape how you saw Papa J at that time? Like, how did
Well,
it work to recognize? Yeah.
I think that's why the call bringing that up was so good, because I saw this picture of Auntie and Uncle Joey, and I'm thinking this is what marriage should be. And then you're watching TV and you see the Brady Bunch and you see Father Knows Best and Leave It to Beaver. And I know I'm dating myself because the young people listening are probably like, what show is she talking about? But those old shows, the family dynamics were such that you thought marriage was supposed to be rose petals and, flowers every day and everything is perfect and beautiful. And then you get into marriage and you're like, okay, this is not what this is supposed to be. This is hard. This is work. This requires more than the flowers. So you learn through the actual experience that they didn't just walk into their marriage at the points that we saw. They went through some things to get to where they were. And you don't understand that actually until you're in a marriage.
Wow. No, that's powerful and a good reminder too. Go ahead, Papa J. Were you going to say something?
I was going to say, for me, it was, again, a lot of how I was brought up. The one thing you don't say to me or a 16-year-old me is you can't do something. The one thing my father would always drill into me was, you don't say you can't do something. You try and you try and you do your best. But can't is not a word that he liked to hear or wanted me to ever say. And the ironic part to that is when I actually told him that I wanted to propose to Tracey, the first words out of his mouth was, "You can't do that." I said, "What?" He says, "You can't do that." Then he says, No. You shouldn't do that. You have so many options in front of you. You haven't started your life yet. You haven't done this. You haven't done that. And I said, and I wasn't trying to be a smart aleck. I said to him, I says, "Dad, you've always taught me to give it my best. It doesn't mean that I'm going to succeed at whatever I do. But as long as I gave it my best, I can be satisfied with that." And when I use his own words against him, not trying to be a smart aleck, he had to understand. But it took a lot to convince him. It wasn't that he didn't have faith in his son, even though I started to feel like that after a while. It was what he wanted for me was something different.
And we were too young in a lot of people's opinion.
In a lot of a lot of people's opinion, we were too young.
Yeah. And still in high school. Didn't have jobs. Neither one of us had a job. At first, when we first got engaged, neither one of us had a job.
I had a job since I was 10 years old. I was a dog walker.
$20 is not a job.
I was a professional paid dog walker at 10 years old.
And he could he took me to Beefsteak Charlie's with his money. So yes, he did.
That's right.
He did.
That's right.
Yes, he did.
But
and Beefsteak Charlie's was expensive. That was fancy for us back then.
Wow. That was fancy.
16 years old, that was fancy.
But a lot of the things that at least I was told, and was a driving force for me was, again, a lot of people that I respected, respect, let me not put that in a past tense. A lot of people that I respect, even to this day, was like, Carl, you're crazy. No, you don't do this. Don't do this. And a lot of them use that word can't. So in the back of my head, I'm like, okay, I got something to prove. And not that it was the wrong attitude. I knew what I wanted. I knew who I wanted. And I knew exactly what I was going to do if things went that way. We went through marriage counseling with, and my mother set this up purposefully with two individuals. One was a woman that I used to call my girlfriend as a child because she was short like me as a child. But she was a PhD doctor and did marriage counseling as as part of her profession. And she sat us down.
Gave us some tests.
And
the personality tests, everything. It was very professional.
Very professional.
Yeah.
And then she and I had a private conversation. And after that private conversation, she went back to my mother and she says, I could see nothing that would not say that they shouldn't do this.
Yeah.
The other person was our chief apostle, who I worked for in a sense, with the radio ministry. But he was also like a surrogate grandfather to me. And he called me and Tracey in his office and sat us down.
And prophesied on us.
And prophesied on us.
Yes.
What he said to me was that he gave me a lot of what ifs. What ifs? What ifs? And those were the prophecies. While he put it in the form of a question,
yes,
he was actually
telling us what was going to happen.
What was going to happen.
Yes.
And I'll tell you a little bit about that.
Wow.
But I guess I was kind of a smart aleck because, again, I used words that he had always imparted to me, words that my parents imparted to me. And those simply were, I'm not alone. I have so many people I can pull from.
Yeah.
People who I hold dear. I get choked up when I talk about that. Because I was scared. I really was. And everything he said to me came to pass.
Wow.
But it was what he said to me was to scare me into making a different choice. And I went back to him years later, before he passed away. I believe it was our 35th wedding anniversary. And I said, Pop, 35.
But he told us, he said, y'all will make it.
He did say that.
He said, but you're going to have challenges.
Wow.
And he said to us, he said, what would happen if you got pregnant right away? I said, well, I'll just work until the baby is born. And he said, what if you can't work? I said, oh, women work all the time. He said, you're not every woman. You're not other women. And in my 5th month, they put me on bed rest.
Wow.
My 5th month with Shanice, I was put on bed rest and could not work anymore. So he prophesied on us. And the other thing that I will interject, the Lord, I prayed, of course, before we got married.
Yeah.
And the Lord said to me, wait. But I was impatient and I did not want to wait. The Lord didn't say no. I asked the Lord, is this what we should do? Is this the person I should marry? And the Lord said, yes, but wait. And we didn't listen. So we did struggle at the beginning because we didn't listen to the prophecy and we didn't listen to the instruction from God to wait.
Because I was so headstrong.
Both of us.
I was so headstrong with what Apostle Bonner was saying to me. And again, what I was hearing from a lot of people. I'm not, or I wasn't an individual who took failure as an option. It was not an option. That isn't to say everything went perfect, but I never set out to do anything with the understanding that failure was an option.
Right. Right.
If I failed, okay, you learn from it, you keep going, you keep moving forward. But in that conversation with Apostle Bonner, and when he was talking about what would happen if Tracey were to become pregnant, and when I referred to him, I said, I have every body I need, including you, in my life to pull from. But more importantly, my trust is in God. That was his last question. What happened after, as Tracey said, in her 5th month, Tracey had a horrible pregnancy. To the point where the doctors didn't want her feet to touch the ground. So I literally had to carry Tracey from room to room, up and down the stairs to the appointments, and we lived on a 4-story walk up. And God has a way of putting you in a position where nobody can help but him.
But him.
Wow.
Nobody but him.
And it's one of the reasons I know Shanice is meant to be here. The enemy is going to fight Shanice hard, but the enemy tried to take Shanice out from day one.
Wow.
To the point where when I first was pregnant and I was having such excruciating pain, the doctor asked me, is it possible you're pregnant? And I said yes. And they gave me an x-ray anyway. Now, for pregnant women, x-rays are not good.
Right.
But they gave me an x-ray anyway. And when I went to another doctor that Mother Clark told me to go to, she said, you sound like you're pregnant, because the pains I was telling her what I was going through. I was telling her the doctor said it was gas. And I was like, but it's something more. I'm having some really bad pains. And when she sent me to her doctor, and her doctor said, you're pregnant, and I was carrying in my back, which is why I was suffering from so much pain.
Wow. Okay.
And, from that, and that was at 2 weeks. I was 2 weeks pregnant and the doctor was able to figure it out. So the enemy tried to take Shanice out from the beginning. And so that's why I know there's a blessing in her life. There's something that God has called her to.
Yes.
Because the enemy tried to get rid of her early.
So much so.
He's afraid of her.
The enemy tried to get rid of both of them.
Yeah.
Because that day
that she was born,
and I was sitting in a very sterile room by myself, and the doctor who came out, never forget, him, came out and said, so matter of factly, he said, there's complications and we can't save them both. Who, and I need you to tell me which one that we have to save. I'm 18.
Oh my gosh.
I looked the doctor in his face and I told him, you are not in control. God is in control.
Wow.
You do what you have to do, but you're going to save them both.
Wow.
He walked away and I called my village, told them what we were facing, and they began to pray. Shanice was born 4 pounds, 10 ounces, 2.5 months premature.
1 month premature. She was born at the beginning of 8th month.
Beginning of the 8th month. And had to remain in the hospital for about a month until she gained more weight.
And what happened was they wanted her to get to 5 pounds. They were feeding her 2 cc's of milk. How do you expect her to gain weight with 2 cc's? So they kept her for a month, and she came home at 4.9 because she never gained an ounce. She actually lost.
Wow.
But because she was a full 9 months at that point, they said it was okay for her to come home. But she never gained an ounce. And then grandma got in there and he gave her grits.
That child gained so much weight.
Grandma,
her first month.
Grandma wasn't playing. She gonna gain this weight. Grandma was not playing. Because I will honestly say I was scared. I mean, she fit between here and here. So I needed grandmas around to help me.
Absolutely.
I was terrified.
Yeah.
You needed your village.
Apostle Bonner.
The village, yes.
All that he said
came
to pass. And all that we said came to pass.
Yeah. I mean, he told us, he did say, you guys definitely can make it. But he also mentioned, why don't you wait? And God had already told me to wait. So I had confirmation.
He didn't tell me.
But I was just as hard-headed and stubborn, so we can't blame it on him.
But see, that also goes to the point where sometimes God has to speak to the person he can get through to. Because even though he told her that she should wait, what I was hearing was all the negative stuff, and I was pushing that out. So him telling me to wait, I probably would have pushed that out as noise. Not a still small voice, but noise.
Yeah.
Had I heard that, and God knows how to talk to us.
Right.
He knows exactly how to talk to us. But when he knows we're going to do something differently, then he has to come at us differently. So if he knows I'm going to go through with this, he sanctioned it, but just not at that time.
Sure.
So I moved up the schedule on him. So he says, well, this is my son and this is my daughter. I know they're supposed to be together, so I'm just going to have to give them some help because they ain't listening.
But I'm also going to beat them a little bit along the way.
Yeah.
We got a little bit of a beating along the way.
You can either, climb that rough side of the mountain, or you can take the lift. And God wants you to take the lift in many situations. Now, there is an education to the rough side of the mountain. Not everybody will make it up or through their situations, but putting God first, even through those situations, knowing where, and I'm not using the term mistake, but knowing that we weren't listening to what we should have been listening to, our brains weren't fully formed.
No. And as my grandmother used to say, hard head make a sore behind.
Yeah.
So we got a sore behind not listening, being hard headed.
But we got an education
Yes.
that I believe every situation, every circumstance that you go through is never meant just for you. So knowing that we were going to go through it anyway, well, I'm going to give you the help, and then you're going to help somebody else. Or at least you're going to have an education in this area that can help somebody else if they're willing to listen.
And a lot of people like to use the term experience is the best teacher. Well, if I've experienced it, then I can be the best teacher. You don't have to experience it as well. But it depends on whether you're willing to listen to that experience. A lot of people misinterpret that. They think it means that means I've got to go through it. No.
Right.
That's not what that means.
Right. Oh my gosh, I can't even tell you just how powerful what you all are saying, because there's two things. One, I'm like, just the grace of God to say, all right, y'all are young, stubborn,
And dumb.
but but I'm not going to leave you there. All right. Like you said, I'm going to help you out. And so even though y'all were like, we going forward, he very well, at least from our the way we think about God sometimes, it's like he's ready to pounce on us. Like, you made a mistake. Boom, boom, made a mistake. They're ready to but really, he walked with y'all and helped you through and navigate through those challenges. That's a very powerful testament to God's grace, God's
Amen.
mercy, his favor, his help. That I think is I want to soak that in. But I'm also, Mama J, what you were saying about the experience is our greatest, how'd you put it? I've heard it all the time.
Experience is the best teacher.
Experience is
but
the best
it doesn't
teacher.
have to be your experience. You can listen to someone else's experience and learn.
So that kind of coupled with, I love the imagery, Papa J, you brought out of you can climb that mountain, that rugged mountain, or there's a lift you can take up that mountain. And that there are some experiences God wants to prevent us from by waiting. And, Mama J, you and I are on a regular prayer call together. So often these themes come out working with either parenting children or working with youth, of kind of that concept of, just learning that there are times it's not always the right time. So God had told you all, yes to this union. I'd like you to wait for that, just not yet. And how parents or teachers or whoever kind of understand sometimes, like, you ain't ready for that yet.
Right.
Like, let's get you, matured a little bit more, grow in your
Mm-hmm.
faith a little bit more, have a little bit more life experience, and then you're going to be ready to drive that car, or then you're going to be ready to live on your own or marry or whatever that may be. But yeah, that I think what you're really speaking to is God's heart when he says wait. There's love behind it. And
Yes.
Yeah.
there's knowledge behind it.
Definitely knowledge, because he can see the beginning to the end, and he knows what's down that road.
Right, right, right. Ooh, I told you all gems be dropping. So I um I don't often get the opportunity, and many people don't, to talk to couples that have been married for over 40 years. So you guys just celebrated year 42?
2. Mm-hmm.
42.
42, 42. And I'm curious, you talked about some of those early on challenges. I am curious, is there anything you would add on in terms of a, a specific challenge you all faced,
Hmm.
that God, you already spoke to a little bit, but is there anything else additional you would want to add on about how God helped you overcome or work through those challenges or that challenge?
What I found is, as long as in the times when I kept God first, he walked us through the challenges in a manner where our level of stress was low or non-existent. In the
Mm,
times where I was going off of my own emotion, my own attitude, my own thoughts, and not consulting God, was when we struggled the hardest, or when I
mm,
struggled the hardest.
mm,
Making sure God was in the forefront has always, for me anyway, assisted in our relationship.
mm. That's good. Anything you would add, Papa J?
Well, again, our for me anyway, as the husband and the father and the head of the family, I again have been placed in situations that just forced me to lean on God. Early in within the first 2 years of our marriage, tragedy struck,
Mm,
and we lost Tracy's mom.
mm,
And with that being a heavy situation in and of itself, we immediately became parents to a 7-year-old.
10.
mm.
Quanisha was 10.
Oh, well, she was 7 when I met her, 10 when we
Right.
got her. So
She's here, so she's giving him the side eye right
yeah,
now.
she's giving me the side eye. You know, she's my daughter's sister. But it's it's a situation where even if I wanted to be somewhat reckless and immature, I couldn't because I
Mm,
had too much responsibility. And yeah, there were days when I said, Lord, what are you doing here?
mm,
And all he would say to trust me. If you
mm,
trust me and not lean to your own understanding, your own experience, you're going to get through this.
mm,
And so it's the foundation that's implanted in children that get them to that point where they are unsure about which way to turn. Train up a child in the way they should go, and when they get old, they will not depart. That scripture is there for a reason. But the first word is train. And when you train a child or a person, a child in God, someone new in Christ, training that individual to lean on God for their very existence. They've already won the battle, no matter how it turns out, as long as they are asking God to lead them through it, lead and guide them through it. They've already won the battle, because he is not going to put you in a position where you lose and he fails, because God cannot fail.
Right.
And so it requires that you trust in something bigger than yourself, bigger than the confidants around you who will try to sway your opinions and your mindset based on their experiences. God is telling you, lean on me. You're not meant to carry the burdens that are placed in front of you, even though sometimes you're the one who placed them there.
Yeah.
Wow.
You're not meant to carry those burdens, because within those burdens, the adversary is just compacting situation after situation, because he's meant to put you in a position where you have no escape, or you feel you have no escape.
Right.
And God is saying, no, trust me, because I saw it when you thought it, but I also see it with you not in it. So trust me, no matter what you have to go through, trust me, you're going to be okay. I've used that not necessarily as a first thought, but it definitely came within the situation, because he always course corrected.
Yeah.
Now, there's some things that you can't take back, some things that you've already set in motion, but God can course correct any situation for his glory. And marriage is one of the easiest yet hardest things you will ever attempt to do in life, because it's a constant blend of mindsets and experiences, personalities, and which is why the vows are so extreme. Now, you won't find the vows written in the Bible anywhere,
Right.
but you will find extremes in the Bible, which the vows are to emulate. Rich or poor, sickness and health,
no matter the circumstances.
no matter the circumstances, no matter what's in between. The goal is that you come through victorious, that you are more than a conqueror through whatever you're going through. And they say in marriage, one of the biggest things that couples fight about is money. I say the biggest thing couples fight about in marriage are the things they never talked about before they got married. How are we going to raise the kids if we're of different faiths? If we're of a blended family? How are we going to do this? Do you even want children? But what do we focus on when we're dating and what's your favorite color? What happens when you can't provide flowers on Valentine's Day and so forth and so on, but you paid the light bill? See, it's where your mind goes. And those are the things. What side of the bed are you going to sleep on? Believe it or not, that was my mother and father's first argument that I found out was the same argument our pastor had with his wife. What side of the bed? Wait a minute. Did you not sleep alone before?
Right.
You slept in the middle. So why is it an argument? And why is this the hill you're choosing to die on?
Right.
It's the silly things that people really put to the forefront and not the things that are lasting. And that's where experience comes from. You have to talk to somebody who's been through something in order to help you.
Yeah. And, you also have to, there are a lot of people, especially in today's society, who go into marriage with the mindset of, this will be my first marriage. They don't go in for the long term. They don't go in with the mindset of, I'm going to do whatever it takes to make this relationship work. And the one thing that I've come to notice when I talk to different people and when I've counseled different wives, I've counseled a couple of husbands, but mainly when I counsel wives, when either of them have gotten to the place where they're saying, I'm not happy, I'm not getting, when I becomes the center of the relationship, divorce is on the way. It has to be we, us, together, as Shanice liked to say for her wedding. It was perfect. I thought it was beautiful. Because it does have to be the mindset of we, us, our, not me, my, I. Me, my, I is the downfall of a relationship.
One of the strongest shapes everybody, or at least everybody says is the strongest shape, is a triangle.
Yes.
Yep.
And they use the triangle to symbolize the relationship between a husband and a wife being at opposite ends on the bottom. And that's the widest point. But as the triangle progresses vertically, and with God at the top of that triangle, the closer they get to God, the stronger they become.
Yes. And specifically, it's an isosceles triangle because that's such a long, it's a longer climb. Yes.
And
I was just going to say, the importance is that each of them are working toward building their relationship with God.
Right.
And it can get skewed. One could be lower on the pole than the other, but that's when you pray each other through. That's when I know there were times in our marriage where I was falling away from God or just not as close to God as I needed to be. And it was Carl's prayers that pulled me back. And there were times when Carl needed me to pray him back. And that's, if you don't take on that responsibility in the marriage, that also can help, or to help be a deterrent or a problem in the marriage. You have to hold one another up in prayer. And you both have to be seeking God, walking toward God.
If he's a second thought,
you got a problem.
You got a major problem. If he's a second thought in your marriage, in your personal life, you've got a problem. That is where you're setting yourself up for failure. I know a lot of people, they want to, modernize their weddings and so forth and so on. They want to leave certain words in and take certain words out. No, there's a structure. God has a structure to himself. And the foundation of marriage, which is what he created, is not going to change. You can reword it, you can do whatever you want, but God is going to remain the same. And that institution is one that is sacred to him. And when you decide to leave him out of that sacred covenant, there lies your problem. Smile,
It's very
Ruthie.
rare. It's very rare that you'll get me like silent. I'm honestly just soaking it in, truthfully. No, I have so many thoughts, but I won't share them all. But I you're really just speaking. You made one of you made the point about basically no matter what, you got to be seeking God. So if you're single, you better be seeking the Lord. If you're married, you better be seeking the Lord. That foundation piece of your life, the word you were maybe jumping around, submission, right? Of well, when I say jumping around, that's a biblical word that people a lot of times cringe at. And I haven't always loved that word either, but I've been thinking a lot about this concept of but aren't we called to do that to God? Period. We submit to God. Who runs your life? Who does your life belong to? At the end of the day, before you submit to a spouse, you got to submit to God. And he has to be the one running your life. And if he's the one running your life, he can get you through any challenge. Like you said, I don't want to take anything away from what you said, because the way you said it was so amazing. But it's just speaking to me, because he's been speaking to me a lot about, before you submit to a husband, you got to submit to me. And I have to be the one that oversees and rules your life. You belong to me at the end of the day. And that has to be the foundation of my life, of anybody's life. So, any challenges I face, even as any challenges I face as a single woman or as a married woman, doesn't matter, because if I'm submitted to God, the battle, like you said, is already won. He's there with me now. He's there in the future. He knows and sees how I got to get there. So that just is, yes, you're speaking to me. So that's why I'm like, just soaking it all in. But I will smile. But I know I could talk to you all for a lot longer, but I will save it for some follow-ups. But I want to just wrap up with this question. And you all know the name of this podcast is Heartbeats. So I want to know, what's something your spouse does that makes your heart beat?
He makes me laugh. From day one.
Oh, I make you laugh? I make you laugh? I'm here to amuse you? That's my joke, Becky.
But I'll never forget, we ran into a friend who we hadn't seen in about 20 years. And we had gone to meet his mom at a convention. And she's one of the godmothers of Shanice. And we ran into her, and we were all sitting around talking. And Carl said something, and I started laughing. And she said, "Oh, my God, you're still making her laugh." And she said, "You guys, I can't believe that you're still in that same place of you were making her laugh. And that has always been it for me. I mean, I was thinking about this before our conversation. One of the other things is I find when something happens in the day, I want to call and tell him about it. When something funny happens, I want to call it. And I know he's working, so I can't always call him and bother him because he won't think it's funny because he's busy working. So I have to wait. And then now that I'm older, I forget by the time he gets home. So sometimes I don't even get a chance to tell him some of the things that I want to tell him. But he's the first person I think of when I want to share good news, bad news, whatever. When I want to share, he's the first person I think of.
I love that.
Tracey has always had a way of turning my head. And her ability to mother our daughters, our bonus daughters, is something that I truly cherish. I know she loves me. I know that without any question. But when I see her loving on other daughters, it's beautiful to me. Now, if any son is being honest about their mothers, I love my mother beyond measure. And I see that same quality in Tracey that I see in my mother. And that has always brought joy to my heart. When she says she wants to call me during the day, my ringtone, now I'm dating myself because I don't know if people do ringtones anymore, but the ringtone that I have for Tracey is "You're more than wonderful, you're more than amazing, you're the irreplaceable love of my life." So there have been times when I'm sitting in a meeting with my director, my VP, my EVP, and my phone goes off. And that song plays loud. It plays loud. And I always answer it. I don't care who's in the room. I always answer it. And my first question is everything okay? If everything's okay, I'll call you right back. But if it's something that's not important,
It's important.
I mean, if something is important,
Right.
I'll get up and walk out the room. Because at the end of the day, there's nothing more important than this. That can wait. But that's what truly continues to make my heart beat. The continuation of the building of our families. I just love how our two daughters became 12.
If not more.
If not more. And, daughters bring sons. So our village is growing.
Yeah.
And we see each and every one of you as part of that village that God has placed in our life for a reason, for a purpose.
Yeah.
And we accept that wholeheartedly because at the end of the day, we have to leave it better than we found it. And if there's an experience in our life that can help get them beyond the situation and get them to 42, 43, 50, whatever the number will be, we won't be here.
Yeah.
But to get them to glory together. Those are the two goals.
Wow. That was you all ended on a mic drop. So that was good. And I know I could, like I said, I have so many more questions, but see, those are for those moments when I get to come back, sit on your couch, and we'll just dive deeper. But I want to just say publicly, just the ministry you all are to that village you spoke about. And, every time Mama J, you share stories or bits of wisdom on our prayer calls, it just, oh man, the way you encourage and put life into people, both you all. And to hear some of the things you all have been through. And I think it's that reminder of, like you said, Papa J, you don't give up in the middle. You don't give up when it's hard. He will see you through. He will see you through. You got to cling to him, but he will see you through. And
Amen.
you guys are testaments of that. And so I just want to say thank you so much for bringing me into your home, for pouring into me, to so many of my friends who are extra daughters, adopted daughters to you all. But man, y'all are a blessing, and I just really appreciate you taking the time today to just sharing your story and the wisdom God has given you along the way. So
You're welcome.
love for you
We
all.
enjoyed it.
We had a ball. And Ruthie, you just so easy to love. Just so easy to love. And we do. We do, honestly, completely,
Amen.
thoroughly.
Oh man, I receive it. It's a family trait. So that's where, when you said train, right? That's something you've trained both of your daughters, that to love big.
Yeah.
That's just a family. That's just who you all are. So, yeah, I honor you both, and I just appreciate who you guys are, and celebrate 42 years of the work God has done in you all. My goodness. So you all enjoy the rest of your day. Go hang out with the fam. I know you got family over, so I will talk to you all soon. So thank you. Love you all. All right, everybody. We are to the end of the episode where I share my heartbeat. And I'll be brief because you all heard me throughout the episode. I was like, you're speaking to me. So I'll keep it short and sweet. But for me, it's this word: submit. Submit. Really submit to God. My goodness, that was a theme throughout. Submit to God. Submit to His ways. Trust Him, obey Him, let Him lead and guide your life. And I appreciated so much the honesty and transparency of Mama and Papa J sharing how God blessed the union, right? He said, yes, all right? Love the two of you together. I'm calling you two together. Wait. And them not heeding that word and seeing, we're going through some challenges, and you see how loving God is, right? to help them through those. But really harping on that point about, learning from their experience, that let God lead your life. If he's saying wait, it's out of love. It's because, hey, I need to work some things in you all. There's some transformation I want to do in you, some maturing I want to do in you, some circumstances I want to fine tune, so that when I say, all right, green light, you ready to go. And I want to save you from some heartache or from some hardship that you don't need to go through. And if God is saying, go over there, and you're like, I don't understand, why would I go over there? And he's like, trust me, go over there. I've got something for you over there. Go talk to that person. Why would I talk to that person, God? Trust me, go over to that person and talk to them, right? Let him lead your life. I say that to myself. I say that to you. Submit. Let him lead your life. Let him be in charge. You belong to him. And I'm reminded that what he asks us to do, the ultimate, he loves us. And so anything he takes us in, even if it's hard or challenging, scary, confusing, the things he brings us in, he knows how to take us out. He knows how to bring us through, and even make us stronger through it. So there it is. I said I would leave it short and sweet. But y'all, my goodness, just was that not so awesome just to hear from the Jenkins and their heart for God, for one another, and for his people. So with that said, y'all, share your heartbeat with me. I love to hear what God has been teaching, and what he's sticking out to each of you, what he's encouraging you with. But with that said, have a beautiful week, and I look forward to sharing with you another amazing story on Heartbeats. Have a great week.